Okay, so we are live. So hi everyone, welcome back to the study session at ArchiDAO. This time we're going to talk about the hot topic AR integrations in architecture and interior. And we have Wen who will talk us about that. He's a design technologist and he's a co-founder of Imersian and they founded it a year ago. And he's gonna dive us into a lot of hands-on practices and maybe we will follow along with him. And being AR has been like long promise before, like we have been talking in the industry about it, but this transformation has actually happening now because a lot of people are jumping into these transformations, trying their hands on, doing the experiments, and I'm really excited for the session, Ben. And let's take us over. What you have for us today?
Great, thanks for the intro, Richa. Hopefully, I don't have to hold my mic up and you can hear me well. If I do, just yell out and I'm happy to just hold it up. In the meantime, if you can just allow me to share my screen by making me a host, that'll be great. But essentially what I'm going to do is just go through a few slides on basically maybe my background, how I got into AR, why we're doing AR in particular, not other aspects of the extended realities like virtual reality, for example, and also just walk you through a hands-on tutorial on using the Imersian platform. So you'll all get sign-up links and you can basically go wild with Imersian and give us a bit of feedback as well on the platform as well. Now, I think I have access to
Yeah, you have.
share, but for some reason it's not allowing me to share the screen that I want to share. So just give me a sec while I figure this out. All right, so now that, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen?
We can see our screen, but we are seeing the Zoom. We're seeing ourselves. That's weird.
Cool. So Imersian. I'll just be very quick with this because I know that looking at slides is quite dry typically. But basically, I got into the space of AR, VR, and this whole space of virtual spaces essentially based on these three main projects. So these three were really key defining factors for me to start looking into AR and VR, and I think it'll be really useful for you all as well, just to even refer to at least the first and the last ones. The first one that I came across, and this was something that I was going to base my thesis or my major project on for my master's before I got into robotic fabrication, which is called the virtual space theory. It's a paper written by Orr Ettlinger. I've got a link down here, but I'm happy to post it on the chats afterwards. But basically, the paper starts off with this image of a painting of the Tower of Babel, which was done by Peter Bruegel. And basically, Orr Ettlinger, he just asks the question, like, where exactly is this tower? Is it in the picture? Is it in our heads? Is it in our imagination? Is it in Bruegel's imagination? Is it in our imagination, or is it actually in Babel? And basically that starts really questioning where exactly or how exactly do you process information within virtual spaces. And he essentially proposes that the Tower of Babel is actually in virtual space, which is which is only seen through this window of this painting. And each painting or every other painting that you come across is actually a virtual space of its own. And these spaces have these little worlds of their own with their own characteristics. And he also draws on some of the photos and paintings of Eiffel Towers and proposes that those are virtual spaces and the real Eiffel Tower is in its own space. And he goes on to the complexities and the philosophies around virtual spaces quite in depth, which I found very, very fascinating. I definitely recommend a read through it. Um, After that, I got into this project. I think a lot of you must be aware of Hologram. And basically, this was early days in RMIT where we were doing a proof of concept for Hologram on how it actually ended up being. So I took it as an elective to basically build a proof of concept, building this massive, not a massive, but substantially large double curved wall using blocks of wood. And literally took us less than 3 hours, I believe, to build this whole wall where I was wearing the HoloLens and my partner, who was working on just uh, punching it and making it like basically building it up. So this was my second like real interaction with something holographic and AR essentially, which was another exciting project. I think the final one is a unique one in the sense that it's called a palimpsest. I think they published on Design Boom back in 2016, where they were trying to capture humanity and our society in general through point clouds and being able to preserve moments of time and capture it and be able to place those point clouds or those moments in time in physical space at that certain location. So the idea is to be able to overlay physical environments with past um, captures of point clouds with sound overlaid on it as well, where people are possibly talking over it and maybe um, going through a process of storytelling, which gives you some insights into an era that was bygone. So this was really fascinating to me because imagine if in like the next 100 years, if we're able to do this exact thing right now, people of the future societies being able to, or people of the future being able to actually see what really happened at that point in time and be able to really interact with you in a more engaging manner than the current methods that we have. So these are the three really influential projects, I guess, that got me into AR. Um, Now, going into a little bit of theory as well, not to bore you too much, but basically this is something that everyone's aware of within the AR VR space, which is called the reality virtuality continuum. So it's essentially a scale between the real world and the virtual world and everything between it. And basically translates the transition between how to get from a real environment to a virtual environment. And everything sits within this gradient of this continuum. So the mixed reality is essentially that's highlighted here, where it's the augmented reality and augmented virtuality. Um, and virtual environment is obviously VR in essence. So using this as a framework, there's a lot of new projects and a lot of studies that actually refer to this particular paper, especially for developments within or like innovative developments within the AR VR space. So it's quite a good paper to read as well. In addition to that, there's the hardware dependent scale, which talks about how um, as we approach the virtual environment, the dependence on hardware increases. Um, and these are a couple of factors that I've been looking into, especially in terms of, okay, what is AR? What is VR? Which one is something that's more impactful in the shorter term versus the longer term? And which one is worth investing my personal time in? Um, And there's a certain sort of macro conditions as well, like for example, Tim Cook from Apple, who mainly talks about augmented reality rather than virtual reality. to be a key player in the space, given that AR actually solves real world challenges and issues, which we already have the technology for, like your devices, like your phones and um, your Androids and iPhones that already support AR versus VR, where you actually need these headsets that are not really portable. You need to actually stay in a certain location to be able to use them properly. Um, in addition to that, this was a really fascinating paper that I came across as well. It's called The Dark Set of Virtuality on Medium. Again, happy to share all these links afterwards, but um, in that paper, there's a reference to Thomas Metzinger, who's a philosopher and VR ethicist, who talks a lot about VR and the possible downsides of it as well. And especially things like, I'm not sure if any of you have experienced using or like VR headsets for an extended period of time, but for me personally, I've actually felt this exact description that's been written down, like the disorder of the disorder or a sensation of unreality as soon as you're out of the space. So being able to jump between a completely immersed environment versus back into your real world, it really creates a very weird sensation that causes a feeling of uneasiness. So this is something that I've been considering as well, especially in terms of VR. And this one's a big one, which I am really, really um, um, like vocal about in a sense, where given that in the current situation, we're trying to move away from a Web 2 to Web 3 world, right? And a lot of it is driven because we want to move away from this control by all the big tech giants uh, who have essential control over the entire internet at the moment. Um, and in VR, there's a bigger possibility of control and a sense of power that you lose because they have direct access to your physical senses and being able to subtly modify or change or manipulate some of your behaviors and mental states could be used in a very bad manner as well, even though the technology itself provides an enormous amount of potential. There are also enormous amounts of downsides to it as well, which need to be considered before we get into this VR space uh, like head first without actually considering all of the aspects to it. So these are a few considerations that I've been looking into on the side as to how exactly is everything going to play out. Plus, in addition to that, we this slide, I guess, is proposing a few things. Firstly, how do we start moving away from native apps into more of a Web3 engagement? So native apps, obviously, you're locked into Androids and iPhones, and you're only able to install applications that are checked off by these. But we're slowly looking at a transition from native apps into progressive web apps at the moment, where these apps are being converted into web apps, which can essentially allow you to experience the same apps but in a web-based environment like your browsers. And in order to move forward, like especially in terms of Web3, um, there's basically a transitory phase as we move into a more decentralized way of publishing these web apps as well. So just a couple of thoughts on the transition as well. And in addition, I think the next hardware revolution is coming very quickly into augmented reality. Even though there's a lot of VR headsets more popular at the moment, there's a lot of research and push into AR headsets that are being investigated by all the tech giants. And I personally believe that over the next couple of years, these devices will start going mainstream in a similar way into how the original iPhone, essentially made smartphones mainstream. Um, so that's just a basic overview of the slides. Um, I guess now I might just go into Imersian as a platform. So what we have built, let me find which one it is. So basically what we've built is a platform that works on the browser where you can create 3D assets or upload your 3D assets, be able to manage all those 3D assets in a single unified environment, integrate all the 3D models into websites. So you're able to consume, or you can allow users to consume those 3D assets on the front end. And you're also able to analyze and gain some metrics on how these 3D assets are being performed. So our platform is very, very simple and straightforward, especially from a design perspective, to easily just jump in and start creating 3D and AR experiences. In order to actually start with the tutorial though, what I might just do is switch over to Zoom and give you guys a link to our sign up page. So yeah, feel free to just copy that and and navigate to that website link, and you'll be able to sign up to our platform. You'll go through an initial walkthrough, which feel free to complete it. Shouldn't take too long, just a few questions around your company names, etc. So it's basic onboarding. But once you've gone through that, you can switch over back to my my session here. While you guys also sign up, I will post a link to a shared folder where I have some 3D assets already created for you, so you don't have to worry about jumping into a 3D program and exporting some 3D assets. So feel free to also download that. In the meantime, I guess I'll just wait for you guys to maybe sign up, and once you're ready, maybe just raise your hands and then we can get going. Sweet, Barbara's done. Or if you have any questions so far as well, yeah, feel free to unmute and ask away. Yeah, it'll just be easier for you to upload 3D assets, unless you already have 3D models that you would like to test and is ready for being uploaded. There are a couple of steps involved in creating or exporting 3D assets from either Rhino or like Blender is typically easier, but in Rhino you need to install a couple of plugins to export them in the right file formats. Seems like almost everyone is done except maybe Sarthak. I just gave him a... Oh, I can't download the folder. That's strange.
Yeah, for me also it worked. So, what problem are you facing, Shri, with downloading?
Uh, a new page is coming and it's blank. Nothing is there.
Maybe you
Maybe
want to
try
share.
using private. Hi Praveen, I just see you've joined. You've just missed
Yeah, hi.
the boring aspect of the entire session where I was giving a very short lecture. But now you're getting into the exciting bit where I haven't started the Imersian
Oh,
tutorial
that's
yet, but I've
good.
just,
Actually, I'm joining everything a late only. At least this is not getting over.
Yeah, last time. Yeah.
Yeah, even yesterday the community call.
Yeah. Apparently, Ben was
um,
sleeping that time.
Oh, okay.
yes, it's 11:30 in the night here, so excuse me for maybe sounding a bit sleepy, but
No, no, no. We meant for the yesterday call, which was 2 a.m. for you. So you couldn't join the call, right?
yeah,
So, Praveen, like for a quick recap, like you can use these links, sign up,
Okay.
and also download the file, and maybe we can move forward.
Okay. Can I get 2 minutes? I should shift to laptop. I'm in mobile right now.
sure. Like I'll probably just continue on, just in the interest of time. But yeah, feel free to. I don't think it should take you too long to catch up. But essentially, once you've downloaded and once you've signed up and downloaded the 3D assets, like once you've signed up, great, you can see this page here. Um, and basically, there's a few functions. Like it's very linear in the sense that it's arranged from left to right. So you create 3D assets, upload your assets, or request 3D model creation. Um, just uh, just for a bit of context, our platform's designed currently for furniture retailers, so they're able to request 3D creation and be able to request 3D assets to be created from our services. So this is not very relevant to you. So don't worry about this section much unless you actually want us to create some 3D assets for your needs. But what might be more interesting for you would be the upload 3D assets. So when you click on upload, you can essentially drag and drop your models into the space. Currently, we support FBX, GLTF, and GLB files. I think most of you are very much aware of FBX files. Um, but with GLTF and GLB, there are different file formats in the sense that they're therefore web-based 3D consumption and providing 3D experience on the web. So and they're picking up in terms of popularity and especially amongst um, game designers as well and people who want to showcase their work in 3D. So Blender natively supports GLTF and GLB exports. At the moment, Rhino doesn't have that support yet, but if you would like to export it in Rhino, I believe there's a plugin in Rhino 7 at least called there's a command called package manager, and you can essentially open that up, which allows you to search for GLTF, and you can just install the GLTF bin exporter from this menu here, which once done, you can essentially go ahead, select your objects, click on it, or type in export, and under the menu, you should be able to see a GLTF binary file and GLTF text file. So the GLTF binary is the GLB version of it, and GLTF text is the GLTF version of it. So that should be able to get you going, but I do know that occasionally it doesn't export materials as well, and sometimes it just misses the materials that's been set up in Rhino. So my recommendation would be to export 3D objects into Blender as an or either you can just export it as an FBX, but I do know that FBX doesn't. I think that it's just something with Rhino in particular where the materials are not exported in the right format, but even FBX for some reason doesn't work very well. So I would just recommend exporting from Rhino into Blender first, and from Blender just exporting those objects as GLTF. For our purposes, I've already created, we've got a couple of models. One is the chair and the coffee table. So I'll just go through the chair demonstration first. So you'll notice that there's a few files in here. So you've got the original FBX that I was using initially, that I was exported from 3ds Max. I essentially brought that into Blender and exported them as a GLTF. So the way GLTF files are basically structured is you've got a GLTF file, which is typically very small. It's just a purely text file. Think of it as a JSON file. Like it literally is a JSON file. If I click on open using a text or a notepad, that's basically JSON. What the GLTF file does is it basically creates a file for referencing all the other outputs. So for example, the texture files as well as the bin file. So the bin file has all the geometry data. The GLTF has the general structure of your 3D model, and you've got the texture files. So these are the three elements of a GLTF export. A GLB export typically is just packaged up. So you'll only notice a single GLB file, which typically has all your textures and the geometry data embedded into it. So that's the main basic difference between GLB and GLTF. In this case, now that we already have these files, what you can basically do is go back into the interface in Imersian, where we have the upload 3D models. I'll just maybe switch over to this view as well, and select all the files except for the FBX, and just drag it into your upload. So that should just upload it based on your internet bandwidth. It'll take a few seconds to a minute. And once it's loaded, you'll be able to see your 3D asset as it was exported from the original 3D software. And basically, this is a 3D editor for Imersian, which allows you to manipulate the settings, set up some camera views, maybe even make some small adjustments to the model to make sure it looks exactly how you want it to look before you publish it for web consumption. So basically, I can just go in, maybe put in, but maybe like you do need to put in a name for the object, or else you won't be able to save anything. So you need to set an object name. So I'm just going to give it a name like chair. Category, I might just put it into a kitchen and dining, thinking it's a dining chair. But yeah, like I said, this is currently geared a bit more towards furniture retail, which is why the categories are more around interior design. But yeah, once you've set up your name, and if you like, categories are optional if you want to assign them, but once you've set them up, you can basically click on save. So what save does is it saves all the settings within the sidebar to the model, and then which allows you to publish it to the web. So saving is like you can do it as often as you want. It's just like saving it as a 3D model that you or a 3D. If you're working on a Rhino file, for example, and you click on save, that's exactly the same function that this does, except it's saved on our servers instead. But I'll just go through these settings really quickly. So variants allows you to create multiple variants of the object itself. So for example, currently it's the original model and we only have a single variant uploaded. You can do one of two things. You can either copy the same object or the original model to a new variant by clicking on that button, which will allow you, which will essentially create a copy of it as a separate object. It's called variant one. You can, if you would like, assign it a different name. And maybe even give it a unique identifier if you'd like. So CH002. And now you'll also notice that you can flick between these two variants. Currently, they don't have any differences, but let's introduce a few of them. So let's say our chair 2 is something that shouldn't be black. Instead, we can make it white or some other color. I'm just going to go ahead and select box 1A3. So basically, when you go into object properties and in the dropdown, this list is essentially a list of different objects that your 3D model contains. So these are all the individual meshes of each object. Now you can select and flick through all of these. Some of them would be smaller than the others, so you might not be able to see them. So when I clicked on box 183, you can see that it's actually selected the seat. Since I just want to change the seat color, I am just going to go ahead and click on base color and assign it a color of white for now. And basically, maybe also introduce a bit of roughness to it, so it's not as shiny, but instead has a bit of texture to it. And once you're done, you can just go ahead and click on none, so it deselects all the objects, and you can go ahead and click on save. So now what this has done is what we've just done is created a second variant. The second variant, we've changed the texture or the color of the base material to white and saved it. So now I can flick between the previous and the current new variant. And essentially what this will allow us to do is, essentially what this functionality allows us to do is create multiple variants. And you can create as many as you'd like and flick back and forth between them. But even you might have also noticed that it's really far away and the default camera is located at the back, but I'd actually like to maybe set it up in the front, head-on view. So basically just set up your camera position and click on the button up top where it says set camera position. So this is now going to be our default position from now on. So if I were to move away from that original position or the newly set up position and click on view camera position, it'll just lock us back. It's almost like using the named views functions on a Rhino essentially. So that could also that's also quite helpful in terms of setting up some views. But moving on, we also have a few features where you can also upload some textures onto the base material itself. Like you'll notice that on the actual frame of the chair, it's already been assigned a texture on the original Blender file. What a platform really is, or what this editor really is useful for, is to be able to just make the final fine-tune touches and maybe create all the different variants. It's not a 3D modeling program. We're going to leave that to the actual 3D modeling programs like Rhino and Blender. Like they already do it really well, and we don't want to be creating an entirely new 3D modeling program. But it's more to give it that final touch-ups and the final set of a final pass to it before it's actually published on the web. In saying that, when you're able to not just create or copy new variants, you can also upload your new variants as well. So if you have, if you've already set up your variants externally, or if you have various options already set up as different 3D files, you can do that as well instead of creating a copy to new variant and adjusting textures individually for every single variant. So there's a bit of flexibility in that as well. In addition to this, you can also control some lighting and environment properties where you can adjust your lighting, your ambient lighting, maybe even give it some color as well. So your ambient lighting maybe is a bit more psychedelic. So you're able to, really start customizing and creating a look and feel for your objects in the space. You can also give it a scene background as well, to maybe make it look a bit more poppy, and again, align it with possibly if you're creating it for your website, you can align it with some of the branding associated with your website content. And in addition, we also have HDR support. We currently offer a default HDR, but we're planning on adding some more features to this, like being able to upload your own custom HDR and being able to flick through the different HDR environments as well. Now, we also support shadows. So initially it is turned off, but you're able to also implement shadows into the space. And beyond that, there is support for annotations and animations. So annotations is when you double click on a page or on an object, you're able to add some tags and annotations to which snaps to the object. So you can essentially give it some textual information that can then be saved and be viewed as well. Um, in your published 3D assets or in your published 3D views. So that's the basic overview. Animations, if you have already set up animations on your Blender files or all the riggings that's already been set up, they'll automatically be imported and you'll be able to see your animations. So I think I should have gone through this first, but essentially where we're going towards is something along these lines where you're able to publish 3D assets on the web and be able to flick through different variants, have a QR code that you can scan and open up on your mobile browser and be able to view them in 3D and AR on your mobile phone. So annotations, for example, would look something like this, where you would be clicking through them and it'll give you a nice dynamic feedback in terms of how it's visually represented. You can also look at some animations of maybe assembly instructions, for example. If it's more related to architecture, there's also exploded axonometrics that can be displayed, especially with buildings on a 3D, on a scale 3D model. And the biggest thing that I'll probably I'm very excited to demonstrate afterwards is our space designer. So which allows you to basically combine or basically save multiple 3D objects or collect multiple 3D objects and be able to view all of them together in your space in AR. So the way that would work is where we've got these icons up top, where you can select your object, add it to your collection across different product pages, and then open it in the Space Designer, where you've got the heart icon. I'd already set a few up for, I think this was for the Cadria conference that I was attending. And sorry, at the Cadria conference where I was running a workshop. So maybe just remove these for now. But basically you can, as I said, you can create collections, and if you scan that QR code, you'll be able to view both of them together in your space. There's a slightly nuanced interface in Android versus iOS, but the essential functionality is the same. So basically, I'm just going to flick back to our editor and maybe go through this a bit quickly because I've been spending way too much time on this. Is like once you've set up your different views, the shadow is a bit too intense. You can go ahead and click on save once you've got everything set up. I would also say create a thumbnail with this view. So basically, when you click on that, it creates a thumbnail of this and it assigns it to this viewer or this carousel on the bottom. So it's not updated this yet in live session because you'll have to refresh the page for it. But basically, it'll be worth doing that for both these different variants. So I'll just go ahead and create a thumbnail for this one as well, which will eventually update on our little icon down here. But once you've done that for both of them, you can go ahead and click on publish. So publish has to be done for each individual variant. And once you've published it, you can essentially scan this QR code to be able to see it on your mobile phone to make sure that it works properly, the scale is right in AR, etc. Or you can also click on that 3D viewer. And
So do
when
we
I
need
said,
to download any app for it, or it will be like directly we can view through browser?
no, there's no apps installed. There's no apps that you need to install. It's all on the browser. So basically, when you click on publish, you might have noticed that there's nothing here because what I published was the second variant. I didn't publish the first variant yet. So I'll just go ahead and click on the first variant and then go ahead, click on save and then publish again. That should publish this to the servers, and then I might have to clear the cache for my viewer. But then once I'm done, I can basically see my objects in 3D space, and if I were to scan the QR code, I should also be able to view this in AR. Do note that there's two separate implementations to AR at the moment. One is a single object AR, where if you scan this QR code that's just been published, it'll just show you that single object in augmented reality when you click on view in your space. In order to do the multi-product AR or the placing multiple items in the space, you do need to go through that process of adding it to your favorites or your collection, and then accessing that collection and scanning that QR code in particular to be able to view these objects in your space simultaneously. Any questions so far?
I had a question like, for example, if I have to host something like for a ceiling, maybe a fan I want to show someone. So how do you like, attach the object to the reality?
That's a good question. So basically, in the multi-product viewer, at the moment, it is something that we are working on in terms of being able to attach things on the ceiling. But in the single product viewer, especially on the iPhones, for example, it's got really good depth sensors built into it. So it's able to capture multiple surfaces, including the ceilings as well, that you're able to basically snap objects to. So for example, wall art is something, or wall lamps. You can essentially just drag it onto the wall and it places it. I think Google or Android also does have a bit of functionality within like being able to scan multiple planes in different orientations, but it isn't as robust or isn't as sophisticated as Apple's yet. In saying that, eventually we do plan on, because WebXR is an implementation that we've built ourselves. The Space Designer, which uses WebXR, is something that we're basically building ourselves. It is something that's going to give us a lot more control over going forward, especially as we develop the product a bit more. So we'll be able to create a lot of more user feedback based feature implementations going forward.
One more question that I'm having is that what is the size of the model, the maximum size that we can upload and see?
That's a good question, actually. So I believe there are a few size restrictions for like the free plans. Like I think you can one of you confirm if you have the heart icon and the eye icon? Anyone?
Not me.
Right. Anyone who's just recently signed up? So basically, we've just recently implemented this the system just mainly for the session where anyone who was signing up would have access to the multi AR viewer, or basically these two icons. These are typically reserved for paid plans, but basically, like I've 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 made it so that everyone in Akita who are attending the session are able to access these features for the next month or two, and be able to play with it. Um, if you don't have access to it, just send me your email that you've used to sign up on our platform, and I'll organize it over the next um, maybe over tomorrow. And that should give you access to like being able to place multiple products in your or being able to place multiple items in your space. With scale, um, just going back to answering that question, this scale the scale will be adopted that was in the original file. So if your Rhino file was in millimeters and your chair is like 450 tall or sorry 750 tall, it should bring it in at that same scale. To ensure that it looks right, just zoom out a bit, click on AR scale to make sure that it looks about right. So you've got a little human figurine in the space that gives you a reference for your scaling needs. Um, it is quite useful to have, especially I've had instances where I exported models that were in meters as units, and by mistake they're like 100 meters big. So ensure like you can just click on the AR scale to make sure that your object is at the right scale before uploading or before publishing. Sorry. Um, we also have some basic functionalities around being able to scale objects in 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 our space, but at the moment it is a bit limited in functions where you're not able to undo items and um, you're not able to put in fixed values yet. So we'll get there eventually, but at the moment that's how it's been set up. As I said, like it is not a 3D modeling software. It is a touch-up editor, which allows you to then publish it to 3D. Sorry, publish it to the AR space. A couple of additional notes I would say would be, at the moment you can see that our origin, where our gumball is quite far away from our object, which is not ideal, especially when you're viewing it in AR, because maybe if you've already tried uploading this and trying it in AR on your phones now, you might have already noticed it might be a bit tricky to work with because it's being placed far away. So one thing you can do is just move it to the center or the origin point, and that should essentially fix things for you. Ideally, what you should do is, instead of the object being away from your origin point in your modeling software, make sure that it's centered on top of the origin point before you export it. So there's a couple of best practices that you should be doing. I think I've just gone ahead into a very massive tangent, but I don't think I answered your original question, which was model sizes. So this is like the physical size, but in terms of the actual size of the model, it's recommended to have it under 20 megabytes for a more optimized way of being able to view your 3D assets, because a lot of devices aren't able to support larger 3D models because like there's a range of different phone devices, right? So the lower end ones typically aren't able to handle heavy file sizes, and they tend to be very slow and clunky in the sense of when you're in the 3D viewer. Currently, it's very smooth for me on my laptop, but if I was on a really low budget phone, this would be very choppy and hard to navigate around. In addition, these the way the way it works is these models have to be downloaded from the from our servers, right? So the larger the file, the longer it's going to take for the model to load up in their viewers. So 20 megabytes, ideally around 15 is like the most optimal size. Or the lower it can be is like if it's 1 kilobyte, that'd be amazing. But life is not that easy. Um, yeah, ideally if you can keep it on between like 15 to 20 megabytes, um, that will be the most optimal. But in saying that, like if you have a pretty decent device, you can move up to about 50 to 100 megabytes as well quite easily. So I hope that answers your question.
Sorry, I have a question. I tried the modeling AR on my phone, and I realized that I cannot move the object in AR. Is this right?
No, you should be able to move it.
Oh. I tried to move. I tried to move the object, but I couldn't. So maybe.
Were you able to see it in AR?
Yeah, I could see.
Okay.
I can move it, but not in AR.
Right. So I think it's that exact issue that I was talking about, that it's away from the origin. So it plays up a bit because there's some miscalculations happening when you're trying to move it because it needs to be closer to the origin. So I think I shared the wrong. I should have fixed this file before sharing it. But
Live is always a problem. Technical issues. But certainly, like BB, I went to Imersian website and they have those chairs already. If you place it there, then it is very good. Like you just see them and there is even a depth sensing. So yeah, I was able to move that time. This time I'm not able to open. Yeah, so maybe some technical issues.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a matter of it being on the origin. So next, like as you can see, like it is a bit further away from the origin. So I'm just going to move it to the center. And maybe this is just a very quick tutorial on how to do it in Blender. So basically you could go file, import your 3D objects into the space. Once it's been imported, for those of you who don't use Blender, there's a hotkey called G. So if you just tap on G, that allows you to grab the object and move it across to a certain position. And then you can just click on your left mouse button to place it. And basically holding Alt and clicking on, like dragging with your middle mouse button clicked will essentially snap it to a certain view. You can also click on the gumball or this navigator to snap it to a certain view as well. And once your scene has been set up, you can go ahead, click on File, Export, and click on GLTF, GLP. Go to your folder. By default, it is typically set up to GLP, so GLTF binary. I like working as separate files, but you can also use GLP as well, which is fine. And you can save it as share. You can also customize what's being exported by selecting some of these objects or some of these values, sorry. And typically the default is fine if you're trying to export all the objects. But if you have a lot of objects in here and you want to just export the selected one, just click on selected and it should export it. Then you can go ahead and click on export selected, which will create our GLB file. As you can see, it's only a single file without any JPEGs associated with it because it's compiled all of it into a single package. And it is a much larger file than all the other files combined. Once you've done that, you can just upload it onto Imersian in the process that we just did before. So that's the basic overview. Just in the interest of time, I might just paste through the other functions. So you can, in the management place, you can manage all the different uploads that you've done already. At the moment, I've got all of these. The reason I was talking about categories before is so it allows you to filter it based on categories here in our sidebar. You can search for objects if you have a lot of objects. Like for example, with our platform, like I have quite a few 3D models already uploaded, ranging from like furniture to lighting to kitchen fit outs to rugs to like wall art to NFTs to air cons, for example. So it is quite useful to have this search functionality as well.
So when like, do we have NFT integrations like at the moment in Imersian?
So I think this is a very valid question to ask, right? Because NFTs are essentially what? They're JPEGs, right? JPEG is a way of representing two-dimensional images. GLTF or GLB files are a way of representing three-dimensional images. Now, at the moment, for example, it really depends on the marketplace, right? So if you're going to OpenSea, for example, I do know that I can go click on create. MetaMask. If I were to go in here and click on create, oh God, so many logins, I'm tired of these. I just doxed myself. But like once you've logged in, fine. You're able to upload 3D models in OpenSea as well. And so these things take in GLBs and GLTFs. So this is an example. I believe there's other metaverses as well that that you have to upload GLBs or GLTFs into. But basically, once you've uploaded it, you can. We are currently looking at a way of being able to upload 3D assets to the decentralized storage like Filecoin and Arweave. At the moment, as you know, like these are all the models. The models, they're all stored in Imersian servers, but you're also able to, we're currently investigating ways of uploading objects to decentralized storage. So like it's truly decentralized and NFT capable. Capable of being used within the NFT space. But that said, you can still use these objects for NFTs by just copying this link and essentially integrating it onto websites. So for example, recently I think I've been exploring, or I've been working with a project called Holy Shoot. So they're doing 3D avatars based on like their football characters, and it's a gamified NFT project, which who basically have used our platform to upload 3D assets and be able to visualize and give their NFT holders a more engaging way of um, interacting with that project, for example. I see a couple of you have your hands raised. Did you have any questions?
No, basically you ask them that whoever is done with the
Yeah.
installation. So yeah.
That's
All right. Yeah. Okay. But that's the basic overview. So like I said, like you're able to use NFT in these 3D objects in NFTs, even though it's centralized. But if you're really about decentralization and want to make sure, all your 3D assets are decentralized, you can, like, we are currently investigating ways of uploading it. We are also finding where we are also currently looking at another implementation that is already in beta, or in not in beta, I guess it's more in alpha, where we are able to source 3D assets from already uploaded 3D models on IPFS or on some other web browser, and be able to display it using our viewers. So essentially, we're trying to make it as easy as possible to consume our APIs in order to create 3D and AR experiences.
Interesting, Wen. So anybody has any questions, maybe we can throw right at Wen.
Go for it.
What I'm interested, like, what does this function analyze? Like, do you analyze like the sales? Or yeah.
No. So I'll go through integrate really quickly. So integrate basically allows you to embed our platform as a JavaScript integration. So you put this in your body, at the end of your body tag in your HTML. And that basically allows you to integrate all these assets onto that particular domain or that particular browser. And if you had assigned a certain value to the object within variants under SKU, they will automatically link to the objects and the SKUs that you've assigned on that particular platform. So this is more relevant for e-commerce. But the other way to integrate possibly is through iframes. So basically, you can just go ahead, take this link an iframe generator. Once you're in there, you can just paste that link in, set up your width, etc. And preview. So that's going to be our iframe. So what you can then do is generate it, copy this, and place this code on your HTML page or your app or your React application. So that essentially allows you to embed our 3D viewer into your website. Now, to answer your question, once you've integrated this, analytics is what we're basically using to analyze basically how many people are viewing your objects, how many people are interacting with it in 3D, how many of them are interacting with an AR, how many of them are interacting with it in Space Designer, and essentially looking at how popular some objects are compared to the others, for example. So like this is just for our viewer and all the products within this account, where I can basically give it a start date and an end date. So basically, if I wanted to start from maybe December from last year until today, can click on apply. It'll generate all the data and the visuals for the performance of those 3D assets. So the longer it is, and the longer the time period, this will take a few more minutes. But once it's ready, you can see like there's been 729 total 3D views, off of which 81.48 in average are 3D views, 10 of them in AR, and 9 of them were added to collection. And we can also see the views by day. That is a massive spike. What are you guys doing? It's like 94 views today. Is it all you? That's amazing.
Decentralized.
And it also shows us all the popular ones. So this chair has been viewed in 3D 68 times, 52, 46, etc. It's been viewed twice in AR, and it's been added to collection twice as well. So it's just giving you some analytical information that you can make some decisions on if required.
When like if anybody has their own business, maybe for furnitures, and do you have like an enterprise plan where you help them creating the models, basically like if they have models to convert them into more friendly, and like because 20 MB is nothing for the way we architects work or even interior designer works. So maybe do you guys provide support in those sense?
Oh yeah. So 20 MB is per model. So that's a recommended upload size for per model. I believe we've got a starting, like for free accounts, I think there's about 200 megabytes of upload. So you can upload up to 200 megabytes of 3D models. So I just think I should clarify that before. In addition, like we do have a subscription model like we have a tiered subscription where we have a pro one where it just gives you a bit more storage and access to Space Designer, and a customized enterprise solution which allows you to, like it's highly customized. It can go up to unlimited number of 3D assets and Space Designer views. But basically, yeah, most of our pricing models is customized, especially the enterprise ones are customized to the customer's needs more so. So we don't have a particularly set pricing. But I'd say it typically starts somewhere at around, what was the pricing again? I believe the enterprise starts close to around $1,000 a month. But that's more for enterprise, like actual furniture retailers who have hundreds of thousands of furniture assets that they're dealing with. We are currently investigating a plan for individuals and freelancers to potentially start using it and make it a lot more palatable for them. I will keep you guys posted. But in essence, I would love for you guys to maybe have a play with the platform, see what works for you, see what doesn't work for you. Just be really critical in it, and maybe give me some feedback. Like you can reach out to me directly on Discord. I'm on the channel, but I'm also available on a direct chat. Or you can also go to our wiki. Within our wiki page, you can see some of the things that I've already spoken of today, like a few tips and recommendations, how to export GLTF files from a few different softwares. And some guides on uploading models. But if you don't want to reach out to me directly because you don't want to talk to me, um, you can just give a really quick feedback on this form as well. That would be amazing. Um, and yeah, you can also reach us on LinkedIn or Instagram if required. Beyond that, I believe you should also have access to this nifty feature. So you can basically invite others to your into your account, and you can collaborate on 3D models. So basically, for example, Supun, my co-founder, he has access to all the same assets here, and he's able to manage and upload new models here directly too. So it's quite useful to create this collaborative environment as well, where you can upload or get someone else to upload 3D assets for you, and you just review it and publish it when you're ready.
Okay, I sent my questions in the chat, but okay.
Okay, I will just stop sharing for now.
Okay, I have a few questions. One thing is, can we share the user's gallery or collection with each other? Is the first question. And second question is, I didn't saw any share button. And third is there any future development on app on phone? That's it.
Awesome, great, thanks. I think these are already great suggestions and feedback. We haven't got a share button directly built in, but essentially you can just copy the link of the website or the web link that you have for the 3D object and share it. That will allow you to share the 3D objects. The gallery collection or the heart, like when you press the heart icon and create your own collection, the way to share it currently is a bit obscure. Like I think you've given a good suggestion that we should probably have a very dedicated share button. But at the moment, the way you can do it is scan that QR code. When you scan it using your phone, it'll show you a link on your mobile device. You can copy that link and send it to someone using that process. Yes, exactly, Richa. That's a UX UI tip. We definitely need to work on that a bit, but I will definitely take that on. Future app developments, as I said, like we're not really focused on apps because I think apps are more like an old way of doing things. We're more focused on web-based experiences because this allows us to provide a service that works on any device without having to develop specific apps for every single platform, like Android and iOS. It works on your laptops, it works on your mobile devices, it works on the HoloLens, it works on your VR device. So we are going to focus more on the WebXR aspect, which allows us to cater to everyone's needs in that sense. Also, it's really difficult. I think I've spoken to a few people where it's just people don't have spaces on their phone devices. I think I had a chat with Richa yesterday about this as well, where having to install apps is painstaking because I run out of storage and I've got 10 different AR apps. Which one is the one I want to open? I forgot. So that's why we're not looking at AR apps. But can you tell me in particular, is there a reason you prefer apps?
Okay. Every time the user wants to try AR, they need to do a lot of things. But if there is a particular app focused on this immersion, users can only just use an app, they can directly connect to their collection and just try their AR models, AR and models. I thought that would be easy for the users. That's the reason I asked this.
Okay. Easier in what sense, though?
Let's see. It means it can be shortcut maybe, or
Yeah, like maybe he's trying to intend like each time I have to share the links and then I have to go and browse. If it would have been an app, I would have just clicked it and it's boom. So that difference can be that he's looking at, right? Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe we can work towards it. So like when I would like to know your thoughts on AR integrations for architecture and interiors. How do you see as a commoner or the industry? You are in the industry for a long time now. So what do you see is the future coming along?
Like, I'm going to be a bit pessimistic and say the future is going to be very, very slow, especially for architects. Interior designers possibly could start using AR products similar to ours, where it allows you to place multiple items in your space. Because so far there's no way of actually being able to place multiple items in your space on a browser environment. You need apps for it, and they're not typically easy to work with either, because it doesn't allow interior designers to have the control over them being able to upload 3D assets and allow others to and allow basically them to upload new furniture pieces or new products and be able to place it in this, or be able to integrate that into their apps yet. So there's obviously aspects to that where it can be addressed, but the pessimistic side of me is that the technology is not there yet for architects in particular, because of the precision that's required around buildings, and being able to uh, being able to get the sizing right, in addition to not being able to have this have the space to be able to possibly view the actual building in a one-to-one scale, is going to be very, very tricky. Plus, I've also used a few VR headsets, which and VR apps as well, which are basically platforms to design buildings. But I don't think it's going to replace our traditional softwares that we use, like Rhinos and the Revits within the industry, the way some of them envision to basically disrupt the entire space. Like, Revit's not going away anytime soon, even though it's quite a clunky app and very difficult to learn. It is the bread and butter of architects, and unless we find a more holistic way of representing BIM data in 3D and AR, I don't see it being a quick way. I don't see it being a quick transition for us to start designing in AR.
Sounds great. So I think we are hitting the mark. And so anybody has any question, like let's conclude the session. Maybe we can discuss the key takeaways of the session in terms of how you see AR coming along in the processes and workflows of AEC and interiors. So maybe we can discuss that a bit. If anybody has to share something on that.
Yeah, I'm very curious to know how all of you are using AR or have used AR or have considered using AR in your own personal practices.
Really interesting presentation. Yeah, I'm also going to speak about the architecture side of it because I don't have any real experience in interior design or furniture design for the moment, at least. But as I could totally agree on like the what you're saying about like architecture being quite late and slow to this kind of tool, as it looks for now the way it's used is quite like a trick and a gadget more than real design, a real design tool, where, as you mentioned, the scale is like so different from an interior design perspective, where you would have a furniture that you could put like 1-to-1 in front of you so you would understand better. Like the only time I've used like AR is like to have a really small scale projected on a table from your model, like you can spin around, you can show it to the client. It's just like really gadgety tool. Well, and it's not there yet as well in terms of like at least it hasn't come to like mainstream architecture. Maybe it is like in like design technology teams where people that are researching about this, but as in like collaborative design or functions through AR, where you could do maybe like test some volumetric approach, like on a little site model as well. This thing hasn't, I haven't heard many things. Like I've heard about this in VR, but it's a yeah, a lot different and not as immersive and easy to use for everyone. So it's yeah, just from my side, which is quite junior still, but like it's not as used and could be pushed a lot more um, for the architecture side of it. But yeah.
Very true, Nathan. Like exactly, like that's how we can use it. And maybe some of the people, if even in the industry, are using in that sense only. Maybe the logos that used to be like a 3D just 2D images, but now they are more AR representing logos of the like the projects. So yeah, in bits and pieces it's coming along, but definitely hoping for something great to happen. Like even spatial,
Yeah.
if you see in at metaverse side, so they have the AR integration, so you basically can use those sticky notes in AR and place them here and there. So that's a very good use case at how we can even collaborate as an architects together using AR.
Yeah, like the few collaboration tool I was referring to, one of them was spatial, as a even though it's because of the size limit of the models. That's one thing that architecture has a problem with compared to maybe an interior design project where it's a lot smaller scale, so you will have a lot less element. The problem that you'd have using Revit, for instance, is like the model is so detailed that if you want to input it into spatial, you can't. So you have to double the work and like remodel your model into a software where the polygon count is like smaller.
Minimum. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's in terms of workflow, it's not there yet. So that's why like they were mentioning spatial as a research tool and collaborative tool just for a start. But I think it would hit like a quite of a wall. Like if you have to tell people that you're working all day long on a Revit model, and if you want to collaborate on the side, you have to remodel another one, they're going to be like, oh, well, I might just do it like physically and play with the cardboard. So it's this kind of interoperability between different softwares and yeah, and software like requirements and this kind of thing that is also refraining, I guess, from using AI, especially because like I'm totally on par with like the fact that we should push on like web version instead of app, because it's super frustrating whenever you go to any like talk or exhibition when they're like AI everywhere, and you have to download a specific app for that exhibition, and you're like, oh well, you would love to just use one thing and it would work all the time. It's coming, I guess, but yeah, the fact that you're using web is also a lot less powerful, which enhances the problem of compatibility with like a really strong software like Revit, for instance, where a lot of details are created for not much really in the end, even from an early design phase. But yeah, that was pretty much the experience I have with AR.
Yeah, I think I agree with a lot of the comments, especially the one that you made about it being used mainly now for clients, client interactions, or maybe showcasing 3D objects to clients. So maybe the way it probably would be positioned at the moment in the architecture space would be a visualization tool for communicating concepts to clients rather than a design tool that we'd actively use to change or manipulate designs. It's a bit annoying that the space that architecture is currently in the sense that it's quite a small market. So I'm coming from this founder's mentality, right? Like I'm a design tech lead at an architecture firm, but I'm also now looking at Imersian as a founder. And the architecture industry doesn't give a company, any startup, a big enough incentive to build a product that serves architects. Because the architects themselves don't earn enough relative to their counterparts in the industry. I'm talking about people in structural engineering, people in like who are developers of buildings and who basically run construction sites. Compared to them, it is a relatively small market, and they typically don't like paying for software. They have a massive overhead right now with BIM softwares that they have to pay a subscription fee for every single employee. That itself takes away a massive budget of theirs to be able to invest in other programs. And essentially that doesn't give them a lot of wiggle room to start investigating other technologies that they can implement. So it seems like architects have gotten themselves into this really strange corner where they don't have the budget. Even if they did have the budget, the use cases are not compelling enough for them yet.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like it's a weird scenario where where the profession is at regarding software software usage and knowledge, where yeah, everyone is like, we can do this with what we have or what we used to have. There is always a way to do it with like if you don't want to use Beam, I don't know how you would do it anymore, but like there is always like you can do some AutoCAD and SketchUp if you want to, and also all the overhead, like having to make all the investment worth it. And it's being
That's
frightened,
where,
like
sorry to cut you.
No, go for it.
Yeah, so I was like, maybe that's where when like your Imersian platform can come up, where you give the enterprise plan support, like, that extra support, which is actually needed by the whole community of architects, because it takes a lot of, effort, manual power. Maybe that's where you can automate, or you can provide that help as a freelance support or something like that, because that's where you can leverage your position. So the other question I had, like before we wrap up, so if anybody's trying to, whoever is watching this video or is right now here, so whoever wants to start their career in AR, or to understand it, what can be the pathways that you guys, like everybody on the call, think can be one of the ways to explore things?
I don't like. I'm just starting with AR basically. So the pathway I got into it like was via the design technology team, where they would provide some Unity training. So it's also another software to learn that you would not, if you're a proper, like a normal architect, that you would not use on your hours, like normal hours. So that's a lesson in one less incentive for your manager to just let you learn that software. So it's a bit tricky. So you have to find time to learn this one. And then I guess it's from my point of view, what I've been taught is like that's the easiest way to bridge like the usual design softwares program through Unity, then to explore a bit of AR with our architecture models. But I'm just at the start of it. I don't have much feedback on it yet. So if there is any faster or not faster, but like maybe easier route, it's I'm welcome to proposition as well.
So how I personally did is, like, I started using AR, maybe using the filters on Instagram to make it more democratized approach. Because if I cannot make those big models convert Revit into AR, but I can have always the leisure of what it offers. So it can offer us like democratization of the ideas basically. So you can go and put these AR models into Instagram filters, and anytime you can go, and everybody has Instagram, and so people can just use it for various purposes. We can also show it on the table. So look how your model gonna look like. If you want to see, I'm sending you this filter, just go there, or your company profile has that filter tag. You can just go on the filters and see how different projects were looking like. So that's how I even started. And you're right, like learning Unity is one big thing, but AR core kit of Unity is actually very helpful. So you just downloading is just one big task, and once you're done, it's pretty easy when you start doing it. And this app called AR, what was that? Sparks AR. It's pretty easy, simple. They have some templates. You can anytime replace your models. You can replace your, the snaps you want to share, and just it's a replace thing. So things like that are really popping up. And what I am excited is like how Ben has developed this whole platform. It is all WebXR and web based. So these type of things I have seen, like I've explored this part where you go and see all the coding is already done. You have to just upload your model and you can use it. So it can be a good accessibility how you can do your own AR maybe. But the functionality that Immersion is providing, like those material intricacies, those reflections, and these sort of realistic view of the model is actually commendable. And what I am most excited is about Immersion is the space thing that you're saying, when where you can put your clock, you can put your ceiling fan, and you can have those little things out there. You're like, this is how your interior setup would look like. So yeah, there can be many use cases, but yeah, obviously I'm looking at the positive sides of it.
If I start talking about use cases, I'll probably be here all night. I'll just give you an example. Like I was having a conversation with my friend at dinner, and they're like, "Oh, I wish I could use AR to see what this dish looks like in person before I order it." And I'm like, I mean, that could actually be a use case, right? Like instead of having menus, you have AR menus where you can see the dish you ordered in AR before buying it. Like uh, it's a pretty fun or playful way of imagining it, but it is a use case, and it's just out of the box thinking as well in a way. But yeah, like I think in terms of getting into AR, especially from a code perspective where you really want to become a coder, I would definitely recommend WebXR being like I definitely recommend looking at WebXR and Three.js as a starting point, because like web AR or web-based AR and VR experiences is going to only increase, especially as we have better browsers and better browser support for WebXR. Like probably a couple of years ago, not all the browsers supported WebXR. Like Safari still doesn't support it. And that's why our iPhone integration is a little different. But there's talks about Safari possibly implementing WebXR very soon as well. Chrome's already done it. All the Chromium-based browsers like Brave has done it. Edge has it. Firefox is on its way. Strangely, they're the ones who've developed the WebXR protocol, but they haven't implemented on their own browser, which I found very strange or ironic, but hopefully soon. But yeah, definitely get into Three.js and then WebXR, and that will give you a very good foundation for AR, like building AR experiences, especially down the line. Like I think those developers who have the knowledge and the skills with the WebXR are going to be leading the way in the metaverse space. I wish I had time to get into it myself, but I'm just going to make do with my co-founder knowing how to do all the coding for now.
Interesting. So I think we should sum up the session with these insights we can take. And so yeah, like whoever is doing anything in AR and experimenting, we can always chat in, like show and tell channel of ArchiDAO, where we can, talk to each other and understand what they are, and maybe together we can come up with some good use cases which are revolutionary. So it's a high far-fetched dream, but yeah, certainly we can always help each other, have each other's back. Maybe where we are falling, we'll just call when, man, we're not able to use WebXR, how do I have to use it? So yeah, it's always good that we have some like-minded people together exploring the same thing. Okay, and so thank you so much, Ben, for your time, because it was good to see Imersian and how AR integrations can help in visualization, at least for now, the ideas of the building. Okay, guys.
Thanks for having me. It's just so late though. Next time if I have a morning session, I'll be a bit more pumped up and excited and more lively, I guess. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. Hopefully people will be able to see the recording once it's posted. Is it already posted? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, it's live. It's going live.
Oh, right. Okay.
People might be watching on you on YouTube. Maybe a possibility. Okay, guys, then see you next time. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, bye.